Nana Shastra Vicharanai Kanipana Sadharma Samstapako Lokanamita Karina Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyago Shri Jiva Gopalako. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyatyade Shatarane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Devotees, so we are continuing with chapter 12, further aspects of transcendental service, and we are particularly going to focus on the 5 special activities, the final 5 special angas or rules of devotional service. Yes. Worshipping the deity, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees, Sankirtan, and living in Mathura or Vrindavan. Actually, let us just begin by reciting the verse, which we did, admittedly, recite at the end last night, but let's do it again and just see exactly how Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada express these 5 in the translations of the Sanskrit verses. Shraddha Visheshata Priti Srimurtir Angri Sevane Srimad Bhagavatartanam Asvado Rasikai Saha Sajatiya Shaye Snigte Sadho Sangha Swato Vare Nama Sankirtanam Shriman Mathura Mandale Stiti. So here's the translation of these 2 verses from Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. With love and full faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. One should taste the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees. And one should associate with the devotees who are more advanced than oneself and who are endowed with a similar type of affection for the Lord. One should congregationally chant the holy name of the Lord and reside in Vrindavan. Yes. All right. So let's get into it. The number 60, the first in the list, is serving the deity with great devotion, or as we read just a moment ago, with love and full faith, one should worship the lotus feet of the deity. So as we see here in Nectar of Devotion, there's really not a lot said about this. But anyway, that's all right. Let us read the verse which is given to us here from the Adi Purana. A person who's constantly engaged in chanting the holy name. Is this really? It is. All right. Anyway, don't ask me what's this verse doing in the section about deity worship. So anyway, well, it's there. A person who's constantly engaged in chanting the holy name and who feels transcendental pleasure being engaged in devotional service is certainly awarded the facilities of devotional service and is never given just mukti or liberation. Well, all right. Although it doesn't seem to be very specifically focused on deity worship. But I think you're all aware that deity worship is extremely important in our literatures. There are different verses or different narrations and stories about different deities and how they're not simply statues. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's the story of Sakshi Gopal, who walked all the way from Vrindavan, pretty much to Jagannath Puri, a couple of 1,000 kilometers. Then there's also in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the story of Gopal of Madhavendra Puri, who appeared in Madhavendra Puri's dream and inspired him to locate him, to find him, because Gopal had been hidden. He had been hidden to be saved from the Muslims, the invaders who were smashing the deities, most unfortunately, including, unfortunately for them. So he appeared in the dream of Madhavendra Puri and instructed him where he could be found, and that he must get the village people and take him out, because he was really deep under the jungle. And sure enough, there he was. So yes, and there are many other stories. Sanatan Goswami with Madan Mohan, Gauridas Pandit with his Gaunitai deities, and many others. So, okay, so that's one. The next one, this is verse 61, recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam among devotees is the way it's expressed in Nectar of Devotion. But in the verse we just read, the way it was put was, one should taste the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in the association of pure devotees. Now, let me just mention that we'll go through these as presented here in chapter 12. And then we're going to go on to chapter 13. I assume this evening. Let's just see how it goes, but I think there'll be time. And chapter 13 is it's just fully focused on a further elaboration on these 5. So we'll go through the 5 here, and then we'll go through them again as they're presented in chapter 13. So that's how we'll do it. means twice we'll be looking at each of these angas of devotional service. So yeah, here we are then, and in the first paragraph, Srila Prabhupada is actually referring to a verse. Prabhupada talks about how Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first paragraph here, number 61, that Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the desire-fulfilling tree of the Vedas. It is the perfection of all knowledge, and particularly of spiritual knowledge. A tree is honored by the production of its fruit, particularly a mango tree. And when the mango fruit becomes ripened, it is the greatest gift of that tree. And Srimad Bhagavatam is similarly held to be the ripened fruit of the Vedic tree. Let's read the verse which is being referred to. It's actually Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 1, verse 3. Nigama kalpataro galitam palam, shukamukad amrita drava samyutam, pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, muhur aho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So, a point which is brought out in this first paragraph, at the end of the first paragraph, is that Srimad Bhagavatam is especially relishable of all the literatures from the Vedic literatures. Bhagavatam is especially relishable because it has come from Shukadev Goswami, as you could say, like the result of his advancement in Krishna consciousness, highest level of advancement. And his name is Shuka, which means parrot. And as mentioned here, when a fruit, as a ripened fruit becomes more relishable, when first touched by the beak of a parrot or Shuka, Srimad Bhagavatam has become more relishable by being delivered through the transcendental mouth of Shukadev Goswami. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on, there's a whole elaboration there. And there's some points I want to bring out, not directly from here. Well, okay, first of all, let's just glance at what's said here. Second paragraph, Bhagavatam should be received in disciplic succession without any breakage. And Prabhupada gives the example of a fruit being passed down from the top of the tree, hand to hand, not thrown down, because then it'll be ruined, but handed down very carefully, then it's preserved. That topmost fruit, which is right at the top, where it gets the sun all day. So the Bhagavatam is like that. When received in disciplic succession, handed down like the fruit from the top of the tree, hand to hand very carefully, then it remains unbroken in perfect condition. Yes. And so this is the case with Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada says right at the end in the last paragraph, Shukadev Goswami admits that although he was very much attracted by the impersonal Brahman, when he heard the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of his father Vyasadeva, he became more attracted to Srimad Bhagavatam. The idea is that Vyasadeva was also a self-realized soul, and his mature contribution of transcendental knowledge was delivered directly to Shukadev Goswami in the manner indicated. So I just want to bring out a couple of points in this regard from Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary on this verse of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So just listen to this, it's interesting. By using the word rasa, the Bhagavatam is described as having sweetness, but the real intention is to proclaim that Bhagavatam is completely sweetness. It is sweetness alone and nothing else. It is indeed tasty or rasavat, but is designated by the word rasa to indicate that it is solely only composed of rasa or sweet taste. Moreover, by the word Bhagavatam, which is related to Bhagavan, the Lord, it is indicated that sweetness or rasa also belongs to the Lord. Yes. And there's another point I wanted to just have a look at. It's a bit subtle, you may have to listen carefully. He's referring to this Bhagavatam verse, which we read, and particularly he refers to the second line, Shukamukad Amrita Drava Samyutan. This word Drava, Drava and Amrita, Amritam. So Jiva Goswami says, by using the word drava, liquid, juice, or essence, with amrita, which means nectar or eternal nectar, the Bhagavatam is described as having the very essence of sweet pastimes. This should be explained as follows. Though the rasa, composed of priti, which means prema, is the best, there is some distinction in this. There are two types of experiencer of that rasa. Those first type of person who experiences the rasa in the Bhagavatam, those who are taught about rasa, they are ordered to drink the nectar of Bhagavatam. Ordered. You must drink it. Must. You must too. You must drink that nectar. So they're practicing devotees. They're ordered to drink the nectar of Bhagavatam. And you must too, out there in Facebook land. And then second category, those who are natural experiencers of the rasa, being participants in the pastimes of the Lord. Those who are participants in the pastimes experience the rasa of the pastimes and realize directly the essence of the rasa because they're participating in those very pastimes. Those who are taught about rasa experience, about rasa, those who are taught about rasa experience rasa only to some degree because of being outside the pastimes. This being so, they should then drink or hear that essence of rasa, which means the pastimes filled with the experiences of the direct participants, identifying those experiences with their own realization of rasa. That will have effect, because the rasa of the Bhagavatam flows like a stream from the mouth of Shukadev, as if he's a direct experiencer. So do you follow the idea? Some people are like us, we're students, and we're told, you must read these books, you must study these things and try and learn about them. Others, they're actually in the pastimes, and they experience the pastimes directly. So what must we do then, as people who are at a little bit of a distance from the pastimes? Because we're just learning. We're not in them yet. So we should drink or hear that essence of rasa as expressed in the experiences of the direct participants. And that will then give us realization. So that's the process for us. Hearing the Bhagavatam. And therefore, as he said, we are ordered. You must drink that nectar. So let's go on to associating with advanced devotees. Or specifically, let's just read again, because I think it's important to bear in mind what is actually stated directly by Rupa Goswami as the essence of each of these 5 processes or angas. So one should associate with devotees who are more advanced than oneself and who are endowed with a similar type of affection for the Lord. This is very important. Means, you know what that means for us? Let me tell you what that means for us. It means we must associate with devotees who are more advanced than us and who are followers of Srila Prabhupada. And because they're followers of Prabhupada, they have the same, they're attracted to the different aspects of Krishna consciousness, or in the different ways that Srila Prabhupada was. Because otherwise, you know, particularly if you go to India, if you go to a place like Vrindavan, you get all these people who study the Bhagavatam, but they come in different lines, and those different lines have different ideas, really different ideas. It's quite amazing. And so if you listen to them, because as Rupa Goswami said, their affection for the Lord is different from ours, from Prabhupada's. Therefore, we can get into a state of confusion, because there will be conflict between at least some of their instructions and the instructions that Prabhupada has given. And of course, we know Prabhupada is our Acharya and the great Acharya. So we should stick with Prabhupada, and we should stick with those devotees who are sticking with Prabhupada. So let's get into it here, associating with advanced devotees. So, yeah, now there is a verse referred to in the first paragraph. Let me just read the verse. If you like, you can note down the number of the verse. It is First Canto, chapter 18, verse 13. First Canto, chapter 18, verse 13. Tuliyama lavenapi nasvargam napunabhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasya Martyanam Kimutashisha. The value of a moment's association with the devotee of the Lord cannot be compared even to the attainment of heavenly planets or liberation from matter. What then to speak of worldly benedictions in the form of material prosperity, which are meant for those who are destined to die? That's basically what the first paragraph, the whole first paragraph is just expressing that in somewhat slightly different words. And here's an interesting point. Listen to this. This verse is exactly repeated in the fourth canto, chapter 30, verse 34. Verbatim, precisely. And not only that, there is another verse which is almost exactly the same. I mean, it is exactly the same except for the first line. And that is fourth canto, chapter 24, verse 57. I'm sorry, that's quoted, actually, it's a little different. That's quoted by Jiva Goswami in his purport to this verse. And it's exactly the same, except for the first line. In other words, this is a very important point, associating with devotees who are, one, more advanced than you, but two, you could say, are coming in the same line as you, but they're more advanced, so therefore they have a more developed taste for the nectar which is coming down in this same line that you're in. And in the second paragraph, the last paragraph, Srila Prabhupada quotes a verse, Hari Bhakti Sudadaya, and would you believe it's Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu is speaking. Hiranyakashipu, his instructions have found their way into nectar of devotion. Okay, anyway, we must learn to take gold from a dirty place. So he tells Prahlad, my dear son, association is very important. It acts just like a crystal stone, which will reflect anything which is put before it. In other words, whoever you associate with, you will reflect that, whoever it is, good, bad, whatever, you'll reflect it. Because the soul is like crystal. The soul is like crystal. And when you hold crystal up to light, I mean like pure crystal up to a light, then the light, it shines straight through the crystal and just shines out the other side. So in other words, in terms of association, whoever we associate with, that we will then just reflect that association. Not exactly just whoever we associate with, but whoever's association we accept. If we're associating with people but giving them our association, then they will reflect us. But because we are not accepting their association, we will not reflect them. Yeah. But anyway, this is an interesting point. Thank you very much, Hiranyakashipu. Haribol. So as Prabhupada says, similarly, if we associate with the flower-like devotees of the Lord, and if our hearts are crystal clear, then certainly the same action will be there. And Prabhupada gives another example. If a man is potent and a woman is not diseased or is fertile, then by their conjugation, there will be conception. In the same way, if the recipient of spiritual knowledge and the deliverer of spiritual knowledge are sincere and bona fide, there will be good results. Okay, so let's go on to number 63, chanting the holy name of the Lord. And again, in the first paragraph, an important verse is being paraphrased. Well, there you see, it's 2nd canto, 1st chapter, verse 11. It's a really nice verse. Just listen to this. This is the verse. Etannir vidyamananam Ichata makato bayam, yoginam nripanirnitam, harir nam anukirtanam. O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord, after the ways of the great authorities, is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Okay, so let's see here. Here's an interesting little point. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written the purport to this verse as it appears in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And he puts it very nicely. It is understood from scripture that bhakti is the method. Among the angas of bhakti, the different practices, among the angas of bhakti, is one of them ascertained as the king? This verse answers, chanting the name of the Lord is the principal method. And Prabhupada says in the 2nd paragraph here, the same thing is confirmed in the Adi Purana by Krishna. While addressing Arjuna, he says, anyone who's engaged in chanting my transcendental name must be considered to be always associating with me. And I can tell you frankly that for such a devotee, I become easily purchased. Then Srila Prabhupada in the next paragraph, 3, he paraphrases another verse from Padma Purana. Let us just read that verse. It appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnashuddho Nityamukto Vinatwan Nama Namino. Let's, I'll just read the translation as it appears in Chaitanya Charitamrita. The holy name of Krishna is transcendentally blissful. It bestows all spiritual benedictions, for it is Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is complete, and it's the form of all transcendental mellows. It is not a material name under any condition, and it is no less powerful than Krishna himself. Since Krishna's name is not contaminated by the material qualities, there's no question of its being involved with Maya. Krishna's name is always liberated and spiritual. It is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. This is because the name of Krishna and Krishna himself are identical. Yes. So, Prabhupada in the almost last paragraph brings out the point how Lord Chaitanya has recommended that we all chant the holy names to clean the dust from the heart. If the dust of the heart is cleaned away, then we can actually understand the importance of the holy name. But if we're not really inclined to clean the dust, we want to keep things, just carry on in material life, then we won't be able to get the real result of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And Prabhupada says, therefore one should be encouraged to develop his service attitude towards the Lord, because this will help him to chant without any offense. And so, under the guidance of a spiritual master, the disciple is trained to render service and at the same time chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Okay, now here, for you devotees who are doing Bhakti Shastri, we have a special question. Would you believe? It's this verse that we just quoted from. It's actually from Padma Purana, but it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Madhya Lila chapter 17, verse 133. Nama Chintamani Krishnas. So we just read that verse. You look it up. If you're doing Bhakti Shastri, you look up this verse. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila chapter 17, verse 133. It's all at the holy name of Krishna is transcendently blissful, and so on. And what you're meant to learn is the verse number. Would you believe? Hare Krishna. You got to really get into it. You got to learn the verse number. And finally, the last of all the angas of bhakti, living in Mathura or Vrindavan, living in very, very sacred place. Okay. So, what is this now? Well, first of all, there's a verse saying that just going to different places of pilgrimage for liberation is not so good. Yeah. But, so Prabhupada says, so this attainment of transcendental loving service to the Lord is the goal of life, and it can be achieved very easily for one who lives in Mathura Mandala, even for a few seconds. It is further said, okay, well, you know what? Anyway, all right. So in the next paragraph, it's further said, who is that person who will not agree to worship the land of Mathura? certainly Mathura will deliver the desires of the devotees who simply aspire to be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. And even if someone lives in Mathura just for a day, one can develop a transcendental loving attitude towards the Lord. This land of Mathura must be more glorious than Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God. So what I'll do now, before we go on to the next chapter, I just want to point out some repetitions. If you're interested, you can note these down. So repetitions, first of all, among these last 5 items. Item number 60, there's a repetition with item number 30. You can just go and have a look later on and see how these are repetitions. 61, reciting the Bhagavatam, well, we already mentioned yesterday, and 54 is a repetition from a slightly different angle. 62 and 56. 63 and 33. In fact, both of them have the heading Sankirtan, both of them. So emphasis is being given. 64 and 55. And now I'd like to point out a few which item number 7, number 48, number 55, and number 64 are very similar. They're referring to visiting holy places. So number 7 refers to simply visiting holy places. And it mentions Dwaraka, Jagannath Puri, the Ganges. Specific holy places, visiting. 48 refers to briefly visiting any holy place or a temple. So there's a slight difference there. Number 7 referred to visiting specific holy places. 55 refers to Mathura Vrindavan and actually living there. Not just visiting, living there and serving the place. And then 64, the one we just read, is exactly the same as 55. So if you follow 7, 48, 55, 64, there are great similarities or sort of sameness. But 7 and 48, they have some differences from each other and also from 55 and 64. And 55 and 64, they are the same, more or less. Then we mentioned the other day, number 10 and number 53, worshipping sacred trees, number 10, and 53, pouring water on Tulsi. Then, anyway, it may be a little difficult for you to follow all these, I guess. Number 30 is about deity worship. But the following angas are connected with deity worship in different ways. 23 accepting flower garlands. 24, dancing before the deity. 25, bowing down before the deity. 26, standing up to receive the deity. 27, following the deity. 28, going to the temple to see the deity. 29, circumambulating the temple. Then 30 is deity worship as such. 31, rendering service. 37, taking the prasad of the deity. 38, drinking charanamrita. 39, smelling the incense and flowers offered to the deity. And 40, touching the deity. So there's a lot of connections, What we'll do now, devotees, we will go on to chapter 13. So here we go.